Hi everybody. Today I promised to bring you an update about the biopsy yesterday. And you're going to see little bits of this video that were done on 3 different days, so I look different in each one. That's why. But I did have the biopsy yesterday, so if you're interested to hear what the experience was like, stay tuned. Okay, so let me tell you about yesterday's biopsy and the whole experience of it. It was really interesting because I was fighting so hard all week to be able to do it because I had that cold coming on that I was fighting off with vitamin C the entire week. And thank goodness I was able to ward it off enough to go. Started out the morning really calm. I went downstairs. My girlfriend was picking me up, and I waited for her. She was a little bit delayed, so I sat in my car for a minute or two waiting. And when she picked me up, we started out. Really funny. The very first thing she said to me was she was wondering who the old lady was who came to her car because she wasn't used to seeing me with no makeup on. So that's an interesting aside for you. So I told her, based upon her reaction, she'll never see me that way again if I can help it. So we started to go out there, and what I had said to her the last time we were there was, are you going to need some help getting there? And she said, absolutely not. I know exactly how to get here. Right. Famous last words. We got on the parkway, and normally when I'm with my friend, and she is a dear friend and she's been wonderful to me and I love her, her driving is different. We wound up getting on the parkway, and maybe I can attribute it, or she can attribute it, to the fact that, as she said, she was really still half asleep because it was early and she's not an early riser normally, so she did me a huge favor. But as we were driving on the highway, she kept drifting into the lane to the left, and I kept saying, Linda! And she would drift back into the lane and then drift back into the other lane. And a couple of times she also, at 50 or whatever, 60 miles an hour, was about 1 car length from an 18-wheeler in front of us. And I kept saying, you can't do that, because if that guy stops, we are going to fly over the top of his vehicle. So I was getting really tense on that drive. I had gone from being totally calm to a nervous wreck as we were driving there. Trip should probably take a little less than a half hour, maybe a half hour. We were going in rush hour. That certainly could delay it a little bit. However, I didn't watch where we were going. I was just chatting with her and trying to relax again after being tense from the driving experience. And she suddenly said to me, what exit is it at? And I said, well, I don't know, because the one thing that David has told me in the past, the one detriment to having a GPS is that it turns you stupid. And in fact, I guess it does in a way, because you just stop thinking about where you're going. You plug in the address and the car takes you there. So I didn't pay attention to the number of the exit on the highway, but I knew when I looked up that we were really in big trouble, because we were 5 exits beyond it. And this is in rush hour traffic, so we had to turn around and come back. And as we turned around to come back, there is a choice on that particular highway of 2 areas. One is the inside few lanes, and the other is the outside 2 lanes. We were on the inside. And as we're driving along, I noticed a sign on the right that said 3/4 of a mile to Commack Road, which is where the facility is. I said to her, I don't see any exits from the inner part of this road to get off the highway. And she said, I think you're right. So here we are on pass number 2 to the place, and we had to go to the exit beyond it, come back and turn around for the 3rd time. By now, my stomach is doing flip-flops because we're going to be late. And I don't know how strict they are time-wise, but I never like to be late any place, especially for something like this. I wanted to check in and sit down and relax a little bit before they called me in. As it turned out, we got there at exactly the moment that we would do, and it took us a full hour to get there, almost 55 minutes. So I left her to deal with the valet to park the car, and I went inside to sign in. They did have me go into the waiting room, and the sad thing for me, because this is a cancer treatment center, the numbers of people that were there waiting of all ages, and it made me sad that there were so many people. My experience of the facility so far is absolutely wonderful, though, but that's a little bit later part of the story. So they finally wound up taking me into the room, and the room, it's kind of like an area with a curtain in front of it. In typical hospital settings, if you go to the ER, they'll have little areas with the curtain, and they'll have a bed, and they'll have usually not too much space. This was about 3 times the space, so it really was wonderful space, and they told her she could come in with me, so she sat down with me, and they took all the information that they needed, and they had me change into a gown and a robe, and they put a warm blanket over me, which was really nice. That was a nice feeling. Once they had me set up and they each went over the functions again. As Linda said later in the day, it might not have taken so long if they didn't keep asking the same questions over and over again, but they function the way they function. Then they got me hooked up. Well, they put in the line for the IV. And I was at that point waiting for them to call me in. They were finishing with a procedure, I gather, before me, and I was waiting for my turn. So at that point, the anesthesiologist came in, the anesthesiology nurses came in, and they were all telling me what to expect and how it was going to work and what to look forward to, and all of that was just fine. And then time started to pass, and I was supposed to go in at 10:45 into the procedure room. It was 11 o'clock, and it was a little after 11 o'clock, and then the lights went out totally. Pitch black in this whole room, computers off, everything. People were scurrying around, and I thought, I didn't know if this was something that was planned or if it was something that suddenly happened, but they got the lights back on pretty quickly, and then it happened again. So here I am lying on this bed, wondering what the heck is going on, and everybody is scrambling because the computer system was down. So they couldn't do a thing to set up anything, to process anything for the procedures. And they finally came in and told me that the issue was that everything had gone down and they couldn't get the computer system back up. So I said, this could only happen to me. It probably happens once a year. Lucky moi. Here I was, and there it happened. So at that point, I was wondering whether this wasn't going to happen at all.
So here I am. I'm in a holding pattern, waiting to go in for my biopsy right now. Right now, I'm in the area where they have taken care of me and where I've been working with the nurses and the anesthesiology nurse and the anesthesiologist have come in to talk to me. So I'm going to be going in very shortly. The lights went out before, so there was a little bit of a delay, which is my life. And I will see you at the other end of this, folks.
Just going to give you a rare shot of me because I promise you, you will never see me like this again. See you soon. Ultimately, the interventional radiologist came in and said to me, we have 2 choices. He said, I cannot send the sample to cytology to check to make sure I have what they need during the procedure because everything is down. He said, so what I can do is, he said, I think it's going to be relatively straightforward because we don't have to search for your mass. I mean, he said, I think it's really close to the skin. I don't think it can get any closer. It's bulging out. But he said, I think we can do it. He said, I'm going to have to take extra samples and make sure that I get enough. He said, I can't get the absolute certainty that we got what we need, but I believe that we can get it. So he said the choices are to go on and have it done anyway, or to reschedule. By this time, I was lying in the bed with the IV thing attached to my arm for 2 hours. The thought of making this trip again, especially since I wasn't allowed to drive, and I was not looking forward to that trip again quite that way. So I said, he started to say to me, if it were me, I would do it. I would go ahead with it. So I said to him, let's do it. So they took me inside, and she had warned me, one of the nurses, that the room was chilly and I was going to feel that, and they would cover me and I wouldn't be so cold. They didn't do such a great job covering me, but they had me set up. And what they said, and ultimately what it was, is that the setup for this takes far longer than the actual biopsy. Actual biopsy is fast. So they got me set up. They were, I guess, attaching the IV with the medications to my line, and they were preparing the spot and draping it and getting, restraining my hands so that I couldn't accidentally, I guess, contaminate the area. So while they were preparing, I was like, I have to tell you, one of my biggest issues with medical people in general is most of them have no sense of humor whatsoever. When I got in there, at one point, I saw one of the people, there were a number of people in the room, one of them, out of the corner of my right eye, I could see something being tossed through the air. Looked to me like the dark, like half of a scrub or something. It looked to be like a navy blue or something really dark. And I saw it just go by my line of vision. So my feeling was that somebody tossed something. I don't know where to. Maybe it was toward the garbage pail or whatever. But when they came over, I said, did somebody just throw something? Oh, was that a bat? I thought it was funny. One of the guys came over and he said, oh, she must have some of the medication already. They hadn't started it yet. I have a sense of humor. I guess nobody has a sense of humor. They don't want you to laugh. Well, I have to laugh, because sometimes if you don't laugh, you're going to cry. So laughing is good. Then they did the procedure, and what he did was they cleansed the area. As I say, they made it sterile, and then they draped it. And then the interventional radiologist came over and he numbed the area, and then he put the needle in, and he was waiting. He said the doctor had told him exactly where she wanted him to take the sample from, and he thought it was not going to be a problem. In my case, they did it guided by ultrasound, but they had all the equipment there to do it in any way that they needed to do it. So I don't know exactly how long it took. I have to tell you, one of my big disappointments was that they had told me that I was going to love the drugs I was given, that I was going to love the high, I was going to want to take some home, that it was so good. I didn't feel any high. I didn't feel any drugs. I didn't feel as if they gave me anything, to be honest with you. I know they gave me some fentanyl, and I heard him say at one point 25. I don't know what that means, 25 milligrams or whatever the heck it was. I don't think it was a very high dosage. And I had told him at one point, I'm really good at tolerating pain. Has to be pretty excruciating for me to really have an issue with it, and that's probably part of my problem, that I do tolerate it so easily. So once he took the samples, and he took extra samples to be sure, they put me on a gurney and they took me back to the other room where they had me in recovery for about an hour, and they were watching my vital signs, I guess until my blood pressure got up to a certain level that they could release me. When it was finally time for me to go, they gave me a glass of water because I hadn't had anything at all that morning, anything since 4:30 in the morning when I took my pills. And I only took them with like 2 gulps of water because I didn't want to do anything to inhibit this procedure from going on without a hiccup. So it was much longer than I expected it to be. It was not a scary process at all. I tried to close my eyes and go to sleep on my own since the drug didn't, I don't know if they gave me the Versed. I didn't feel anything. I felt as if I was aware of the entire thing. Could I have missed something? Maybe. I don't know. They told me I wouldn't remember anything. I remembered it as soon as we left in much more fine detail than I do today. But it was not a scary thing. I had never had a biopsy before. I'm sure many, many people don't. And it can sound frightening. It was not. Mine was done. It was a core needle biopsy, which is a larger needle from what I'm told. It gets a bigger sample than the fine needle biopsy, and it was not a major thing. They wanted to make sure that I didn't have any issues and I didn't have any bleeding afterwards, and the whole thing is to make sure that nothing gets infected. My biggest problem, and I didn't know this was going to happen, is they told me that I couldn't drive or do much of anything for 24 hours. After that, they said I could drive again and I could take a shower later today, but that I couldn't lift anything more than 10 pounds for the next 10 days. I was planning on grooming my dogs. They're not much over 10 pounds, but I'd have to lift each one to put them in the sink and clean them and then groom them. I can't do that now, and by the time 10 days is up, I'll be in the hospital. So I'm not sure how I'm going to handle that, but I have to do something about it. That was one issue, and the other is all the normal things you do in life. I need to go buy dog food now. The dog food is 15 pounds each bag. I don't want to buy the small bags. It's much more expensive that way. So I'm kind of trapped with a lot of things, unfortunately, that normally would be simple to deal with. I'm not sure how it all is going to sort itself out, but I'm past that step, and now it's on to step number 3, which is the CT scan scheduled for Monday at about 5:30, 5:45 in the evening. So I will give you an update after that. The thing that bothered me the most is when they told me that it takes 5 business days to get the results of the biopsy. That was disappointing because I'm seeing the doctor on Tuesday and she still won't know what's going on. So I am definitely concerned about it. We'll see what she tells me, and I'll certainly let you know that as well. And I guess that's it. If you have any questions, holler. If I can think of anything else, I will certainly tell you. And I did want to give you a couple of my life lessons, and it's funny because I was thinking about them yesterday and today, but I didn't write it down. I should have written it down because they were really good things to talk about, and they have totally slipped my mind. So if I can think of it, I'll come back and film that separately before I load this. And if I can't, forgive me, I will do it next time, and I will remember to write it down. Take care, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'm happy to be here sharing my story. I pray, truly, that my story touches somebody else who's going through something scary and lets you know that maybe it's not quite as scary as we thought it is. I think the most frightening thing very often is the unknown. Once we know it, we'll deal with it. So that's it, and I will see you very soon. Once again, I love you all. Your comments, your prayers, your thoughts, and your concerns touch me beyond measure. I thank you so much. Take care.